Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics. So, although the situation is very tentative, Putin's not having the best start to the week. He's failed once again to install a pro-Russian, anti-Europe stooge into the Romanian government, and the prospect for the United States to finally see Russia as an obstacle to peace may be drawing closer. The US government has prepared what are being described as bone-crunching sanctions against Russia. However, there is also a personal call between Putin and Trump today. That may be an indicator of how strong the hold still is on Agent Krasnov, or if his programming is breaking a little. But first, for daily news and commentary, please hit the subscribe button to stay notified. So there's been a bit of a flurry of elections around Europe this weekend. The far right have been making gains in Portugal, but they're not going to find their feet under the table of government. Things are a bit tight in Poland for the presidency, but the pro-European candidate is slightly ahead so far. The big news was in Romania, though, where their Russian-supporting MAGA equivalent lost. Simeon was channeling his inner Trump to argue that the election was being stolen and for supporters to protest, but the result is not even close. The election should have taken place last year, of course, but was abandoned due to Russian interference. A reminder that Putin does not just wage conventional wars, he takes countries over by stealth as well. He's been active in the UK, in Germany, in France, in Italy, as well as countries closer to the Russian border. His is a campaign to weaken Europe from within before using the military option. I think more people are cottoning on to the long-term threat Russia poses, whilst Putin, or people like Putin, remain in charge. In fact, one potential area of friction, I suppose, between Europe and America may come if a peace between Ukraine and Russia is eventually agreed. If a peace deal is reached, Trump will, of course, want to rapidly normalise relations with Russia, diplomatically and economically, because that's Trump's main interest in peace, as I'll go on to in a moment. It is the profit to be made. But Europe, of course, will recognise that even with a peace deal, it is only temporary, that Russia represents a long-term threat, and will not want to play ball with that. Putin is hell-bent on expanding the Russian Empire into Europe. He's said so, he's explicit about it, and that much is now obvious to most of Europe. Remember, the reason Trump wants the peace deal is because he views war as unprofitable. We've seen this time and again. It's why he has done deals with various Arab countries last week without demanding they offer Israel security guarantees or even recognition. It's why he didn't visit Israel itself. He's even negotiated directly with Hamas to secure the release of an American-Israeli hostage. Remember, this is the man who invited the Taliban to Camp David. He doesn't, like a lot of countries or governments, he doesn't sort of conduct his international affairs alongside the normal lines that country would. I mean, he's not a peaceful man as such. He doesn't care about the right side winning or what happens to the people living in the war zone. He just wants conflicts to end because he sees more profit in peace than war, which is probably the best we can expect. And that was demonstrated, I think, most clearly in his treatment of the Houthi rebels in Yemen, right? So he's come to an arrangement with them. He will leave them alone if they stop attacking American shipping, but they're still welcome to attack Israel. Because Trump now sees Israel as the barrier to peace in Gaza, he doesn't appear to want to go as far as actually helping the Palestinians because he doesn't care about the people that aren't him. But unlike other US presidents, he seems to be perfectly at liberty to snub Israel and do deals with Arab countries, which still allow them to not recognise Israel and even attack them in at least one case. So what's this got to do with Putin? Well, although Trump has very obvious personal regard for Putin, the same logic can still be deployed here. Finland's president, Alexander Stubb, has bonded with Trump over their shared love of golf. Stubb's one of the European leaders who has been working on careful and persistent diplomacy with Trump for quite some time. He gets the feeling that Trump is finally losing patience with Putin, and there was a package of sanctions against Russia ready to go, which have been described as bone crunching. Stubbs said he'd been trying to explain to Trump that Russia was not this great power that it once was, certainly not economically, that it's smaller than Italy. Takes me back to my thoughts. So when Trump won last November, my reasoning because at that time you're sort of thinking about Ukraine thinking, oh no. But my reasoning was, well, maybe Trump would view Putin differently this time. See, back during Trump's first term, Putin was this immensely powerful dictator, so confident, so assured he could do whatever he wanted. That appealed to Trump, right? That absolutely appealed to Trump. He wanted to be like him. But the war in Ukraine has shattered that illusion. Putin can easily be characterized as a loser. Thought he would sweep through Ukraine in 3 days, had been planning it for years. 3 years later, he's still stuck in the mud. Abject failure with no end in sight. Surely Trump would not want to support a loser. How would that reflect on him? And I remember at the time, security experts saying that is the pitch that Western leaders should make to Trump. Point out that Putin is actually a loser. But Trump still seemed to view Putin and Russia in the same terms he did before, and President Stubb has been working on that perception, it seems. A sort of two-pronged argument. Russia is not strong, it is weak, but also it's not Ukraine refusing to make peace, but Russia. Get Trump to see that not only is Russia the barrier to a peace deal, but that they're not strong enough to resist a big push by America, because it may be, even if you can get Trump to recognise that Russia is the barrier to peace, if Trump, because Trump's argument, the reason why Trump lent on Ukraine, remember, of course, there's the personal antipathy with Zelensky himself. But in general, and Trump was quite open about this because he felt that Ukraine had no cards, it had no leverage. So it was easier to lean on Ukraine. But that's, leaning on Ukraine was attempting to get Ukraine to say, yes, OK, we'll all just commit suicide, which they're not going to do. So if you can persuade him that Russia is the barrier, but also that Russia also has no cards effectively, that America can actually force Russia into a deal. Stubb also described Trump as losing his patience. For all his bluff a few weeks ago about being willing to walk away, this is not how it has transpired. Walk away from his minerals and reconstruction deals? It seems not. If Trump is getting impatient, it means he wants the peace deal. If Russia is the one blocking all attempts at peace, and it is, and you can persuade Trump that eye-watering sanctions will force Putin into a corner, Putin may well have overplayed his hand here. Maybe the King of America card wasn't quite the certain winner he thought it was. One of the sanctions that had been considered was, and this would have been pound crunching, was apparently a 500% tariff on the goods of any country trading in energy with Russia. I imagine, this is certainly one of the ones being revised, put it this way. They're not doing that. I mean, if Trump couldn't stand the heat from 145% tariffs on Chinese goods, he's not going to be able to deal with the fallout from, can you imagine, 500% tariffs on all Chinese goods, Indian goods, potentially others as well. I suspect it's not realistic to block all exports from Russia with American-backed sanctions, certainly not with tariffs. But Russia's economy is already quite fragile. It may only take a relatively modest hit to their exports to reach a tipping point sooner rather than later. I got the impression that, let's say Harris had won, that she would have just carried on with the support of Ukraine, military support of Ukraine, and they were just waiting until the Russian economy broke anyway. The new plan is apparently to hurt companies who import Russian energy, so target those companies, rather than hitting the trade of the entire country. It seems Trump has lost his faith in the power of cartoonish triple-digit tariffs. In fact, Trump's strategy on tariffs has also seen a change this weekend, but that's another issue. So Putin will be talking to Trump today in a telephone conversation. That, of course, could, lots of things could happen there. Putin will, of course, attempt to re-establish control over his agent, right? We know that Putin has had a very strong hold on Trump for many years. But will he be able to offer Trump something which will work? It may be that Putin just needs to play for more time in order to improve his leverage when the peace talks begin in earnest. Or will Trump finally realise that he actually has a lot of power over Putin? If Putin doesn't manage to work his magic on Trump today, and, huge if, because, again, we know that Putin is very, very good at wrapping Trump around his finger. But if he doesn't, then a bad weekend could well turn into a catastrophic week for him. A month or two ago, he was looking forward to Trump removing sanctions against Russia. Now he might be ramping them up. But there we are. Those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. If you've enjoyed the video, please click the like button and subscribe for further content. If you'd like to support the channel further, you can click the join button for memberships. Thanks for watching, and until next time, I'll see you later.